Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to foot.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everybody? Good morning, dissidents, one and all. Welcome to the Morning Dew edition of the Dew Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss here, of course, with Russell Dobular.
Hello.
Pleasant good morning to you all. I want to thank Courtney for remembering my vocabulary lesson from last night. She says, part 2 of the Clopin. The Clopin, yes, the Clopin. We did a patron-exclusive live stream last night over on Rumble. We went well into the night unexpectedly, which I'll explain in a second. But the Clopin goes back to my days working retail, where you would work a closing shift and then an opening shift the next morning. So it's basically a double shift with a 6-hour nap in between. We used to call that the Clopin, the close followed by the open the next day. Those of you who did tune in last night, we thank you very much. It was a great time. We do 2 patron and paid Substack subscriber exclusive live streams per month over on Rumble. Those are private streams at unlisted Rumble links. We were about 5 minutes from wrapping the show. We thought, wow, we did a nice tight show, packed, full of content, great, excellent. We'll bring it in right at about the 2-hour point, and then the stream cut out. We had a technical problem. I think it was a technical problem on Rumble's end, which Rumble, please try and fix that. Like, we need Rumble to be strong. If it's going to be our lifeboat, we need it to be a reliable lifeboat. We can't have a lifeboat with holes in it, so that really can't happen, Rumble. Let's try and get our shit together, shall we? But we ended up switching over back to a YouTube link. We got a few people from the Rumble stream come over to YouTube. I understand some of the patrons were messaging us last night. I put up a post last night. The entire stream, for those of you who missed it or who joined late or couldn't catch up because the stream cut out, we're going to have that entire replay up this afternoon on both Patreon and Substack. So hang tight, those who missed that patron show. We will get the full video to you guys this afternoon. We have the video. The stream got corrupted on Rumble, but we still have the video file, so we will be posting that as its own piece later this afternoon. But thank you to everybody who joined last night. It was a fun show despite those technical hiccups, and now we're back here the morning after. So we're putting in the time this week. We thank you guys very much for being here. We got a couple super chats in the queue already, which we'll read in just a moment. Those are super helpful, especially on these morning streams. And the like button is especially important to smash in the morning because we're up against the algo in the morning. There's not as many YouTubers watching in the morning, so we need all the help we can get. So please hit that like button.
Yeah, you know why? Because I am.
We are tired. Yeah. Of course, we're tired.
We just did a show like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, we just did a show 10 minutes ago. Yeah, exactly.
But also with me, many of you may not know this, but I am of Mongolian descent. So my eyes kind of have a remnant epicanthic fold, so I always look tired or stoned.
Interesting.
I have to basically do that to not look tired or stoned.
I never knew you were Mongolian.
A little bit. Well,
that explains a lot, actually.
So, my savagery, my brutality.
Well, it explains some of your anti-China rhetoric.
Where
I was going with that. We all knew. Now it comes out. Now it comes out months in. I never knew you were part Mongolian.
No, you know it's very funny. Me and my father, both from Flushing, right? We both wound up working with horses.
Right.
It's in the blood, man.
Right.
It's in the
That's
blood.
true. So is you're Mongolian on your father's side?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
He looks more Asiatic. Like he has kind of the cheekbones, and his eyes are even more of an epicanthic fold than mine.
Interesting. Yeah, I never knew that.
Well, this is why I always said when people would try to defend Elizabeth Warren, I'd be like, so what would you think if I put myself down as Asian on forms? Because I thought I would get an advantage from it. Would you think that was fucking kosher?
Well, of course.
Like I would never consider that. So why does she get to identify as Native American? Like, obviously that's a scumbag move.
Of course. I mean, I'm half Maltese. The Maltese people are basically, it's a tiny island in the Mediterranean. And so there's a lot of Greek blood in Maltese people, a lot of Sicilian blood, but also a lot of Libyan blood, which is North African blood. So I'm probably about 1/6 Libyan, which means I have way, not even close, way more African blood in me than Elizabeth Warren has Native American blood in her. Can I call myself an African American? Would people be okay with that?
Right. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have a great show for you guys this morning. Coming off of a Patreon exclusive stream last night, we had a bunch of new people sign up to Patreon and Substack over the last couple of days. We'll give you your shout out, your name up in lights in just a few minutes. But let's get started, shall we? Like I said, folks, very important. We are up against the algorithm, especially in the morning when there are not as many YouTube viewers online. So we need all the help we can get for the morning show. So please, if you have not hit that like button, please do so.
We are invoking our dark god today to juice the algorithm.
Exactly.
That's our real candidate.
Exactly.
The Lord of Chaos.
Russell debuted a new shirt last night that he just got for the show. It was a cool little Venn diagram shirt, which I liked very much. But we're going to start out with some political polling for 2024. This is news of a kind. Joe Biden has reclaimed the lead from Donald Trump in the Real Clear Politics of General Election polling. As you can see now, there is an average spread of Biden plus 0.4%. And if you notice, he's been up or tied in a lot of these polls that have come out now in the last month. You had a couple of terrible ones in mid-June, but the last three, Morning Consult, Yahoo News, Yahoo News and Quinnipiac are two of the last three where Biden's at +4 and +5. There was another Monmouth poll that just came out last night that actually had Biden over Trump +7. And so that marks obviously a shift in the polling. I can't imagine it's because of anything Biden has done. If anything, you'd have to imagine it was a response to some of the Trump legal problems. Maybe there's just a lack of confidence setting in. And what have I said a million times? Obviously, Russell has gone out on a limb and predicted a DeSantis win for the Republican nomination and for the presidency. I have been much more bearish on DeSantis than Russell has, but I have put the caveat in there that in order for DeSantis to win, Biden needs to start beating Trump in these polls, and DeSantis has to start closing the gap. So if we look at the DeSantis versus Biden numbers, Biden's still plus 1.5. So right now, it's not looking like DeSantis is outperforming Trump in the general election polls versus Biden. So that's bad news for DeSantis. The good news for DeSantis, though, is that the polling is starting to trend away from Trump in a head-to-head matchup versus Biden. The bottom line is, as I see it, the less confident the Republican electorate is that they can put a win on the board in November no matter what, the better news for DeSantis. Like, the only way DeSantis wins the nomination and has a chance at making a comeback is if Trump's polling collapses against Biden and DeSantis remains close. This is step one in that process. Again, I am in no way as bold as Russell is in going out on a limb and predicting a DeSantis a win. I don't see a reason to do that at this point. But one of the things I've said is going to be the key thing to look for is the general election polling against Trump. versus Biden. That's why if DeSantis were smart, he would not be trolling Trump about LGBT issues. He wouldn't even be running against Trump. DeSantis has to run against Biden and hope he can close the gap against Biden and hope that Trump can't. That's his opportunity. This is a very small step one, but it is a step one.
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
Yeah, my assumption was never, oh no, DeSantis is going to win in spite of Donald Trump's crushing poll numbers. My assumption was always that once shit got real, Donald Trump's poll numbers would collapse as more and more Republican voters said, seriously? We're going to nominate that we are desperate to get Biden out of the White House. And we're going to nominate a guy who, best case scenario, can only serve one term, who's almost as old as Biden, and who's under prosecution, four? He's under 4 indictments now, or soon to be, a 4th one added. I always, based on my experience of elections, felt people love to say crazy shit before Labor Day. They love it. They love it. Hey, we're running Michael Cera. What do you think? Oh yeah, Michael Cera. You know, don't fucking say it. They just love to say crazy shit to pollsters until it comes time to actually talk about who you're really going to vote for. There is a go back and look at every election in modern memory, in modern history. There's some crazy fucking shit that they're getting behind Herman Cain, or there's always some nonsense like that. It really doesn't mean anything. Once it starts to get real, and look, we're starting to get closer to Labor Day. And now you're seeing several polls where Trump is not just behind Biden, he's way behind Biden. What does that tell you about how fundamentally weak Trump's candidacy really is? Because as Keaton points out, it's certainly not anything Biden did.
Right.
It's because Biden all of a sudden, if Biden did a bunch of great stuff, you could say maybe it's partly that. And even that would say a lot about how weak Trump is, that would be. But he did nothing. If anything, he's just more and more made the case that he's fundamentally unqualified by his cognitive decline to be president. There's been just more and more evidence.
Of course, yeah.
Not up to the job, and his poll numbers are collapsing. So, look, DeSantis, I agree that that LGBT video was fucking really dumb. But the case that he's making, and we got into this in a segment, the case that he's making against Trump more fundamentally is, yeah, Trump talks a lot, but he didn't actually do any of the things he said he was going to do. I actually did these things. I've always said that's his strongest argument to the Republican base in terms of peeling away some of Trump's voters. Now, whenever I get into this, you'll have a lot of people, you haven't been around the country, you don't know how much to yeah, man, I'm not saying that you don't have your hardcore MAGA people who are going to vote for him no matter what. I don't think they're a majority of the Republican Party. And if that's all Trump has, by the time you get into the primaries, he's going to lose.
I mean, I'm not ready to make that prediction yet because I still think at the moment he's got a pretty strong grip on that base. What will erode that, though, is a collapse in polling. And I know people are asking in the Rumble chat and some in the YouTube chat here, do I trust establishment polls now? The polls are actually getting more accurate as time progresses since 2016. The reason there was a massive collapse in polling in 2016 is because Trump's theory of the case that there was a hidden vote out there for him was correct. And when that vote showed up, it really shocked the pollsters because they weren't accounting for that in their models. Of course, right. 2016 itself adjusted the model moving forward. And the polls have gotten more accurate since then, not less. People think the polls were wrong in 2022. They weren't that wrong. The polls never pointed to a red wave in the Senate. The polls
that was
pointed
more pundit
to
created.
It was more pundit created. The polls pointed to tightening races in states where Democrats had big leads. And that was true. The races did tighten in states where Democrats formerly had big leads. They didn't tighten enough to tip the scale. So the polling has actually not been wildly off for the past couple of cycles because the Trump base has started to be more accounted for in the polling. Not entirely, but more. And so, yeah, being down 4, 5, 7 points in the polls absolutely means something. Again, it's very, very early. I'm not calling DeSantis the favorite. Me, I know Russ is. I'm not there at this point. But what I'm saying is, as Trump looks less electable, that is the only chance that Meatball Ron actually has to catch him. And when that starts to happen, that starts to open up opportunities. That's all. And that is a significant development, especially now, because DeSantis' campaign has gotten a lot of bad press the past couple of weeks, right? They've had to lay off some staff, right? A lot of the big money donors have been backing off. The only chance that he has to change that calculus is if Trump starts polling weak against Joe Biden, and Trump's negatives are still extremely high amongst likely voters, amongst normies. You have to understand, the normies own the electoral system. Now, I've talked about this a lot in the past few months. I'm not going to get into all of it now. Among the normies, which is to say amongst the electorate, Trump has extremely high negatives. Biden has high negatives too, but so does Trump, which makes 2024 a really unpredictable race, especially with Trump there. And so that's the development of the morning.
And you know, yeah, you might feel some people are fanatically devoted to Trump. A lot of those people are also fanatically determined to get Biden out of the White House. And if push comes to shove, and I think me and Keaton are, we're in agreement about what it would take for DeSantis to win. It has always been my thesis that the predicates that Keaton is presenting are going to be fulfilled. That is that Trump's poll numbers are going to collapse, and enough of those Republicans who really mostly, more than they love Trump, they hate Biden, are going to flip to a winner. And DeSantis, this is the thing, you can say what you want. He's this, he's that, he's boring, he's awkward, whatever, man. He's the only one who had a red wave. So he's not that much of a loser, right? He's not politically incapable.
Right. He's proven himself viable in the kinds of spaces that will determine a national election because he dominated the affluent, moderate suburbs. And that's his theory of the case. And that is a strong theory of the case in a general election. DeSantis's problem is he gives off major deep state vibes. And I think the overall thematic thrust of this campaign so far is the people versus the deep state. That's what this weaponization of the federal government is. That's what that new church committee is. Like, that's getting out there a lot. And Trump represents their fighter in their eyes against the deep state. DeSantis does not. That's his major challenge. So in order for DeSantis to overcome that, Trump is going to just have to become a non-starter in the eyes of a lot of people. It's possible that will happen. I'm not saying yes or no at this point, but this polling shift in the last month is significant because it's over the summertime when people don't tend to pay attention to politics very much, so they don't tend to change their minds on stuff very much. Biden has only gotten worse. I mean, Biden's not doing anything that would give him, it's not like he signed a major piece of legislation or some major event happened that would give him a boost. It's that Trump has been getting pummeled by the deep state, ironically. And a lot of people respond to that by redoubling their support for him. But a lot of normies respond to that by saying, oh, enough with this guy. And you have to do not underestimate the normies' influence on the electoral system. That's what I have to understand. We don't expose ourselves to too many normies in this space because we're not normies. But the normies control the electoral process. And if you alienate too many of them, you can't win. It's that simple.
Right. And also going back to the very controversial coverage we did on the Jason Aldean video. Look at what his explanation of that video was. People want a return to normalcy. Ron DeSantis can make that pitch. And don't underestimate how deep the desire to kind of, it's the same pitch that Reagan had in 80, right? The country's falling apart. People are burning things and country's crazy, right? It's taxi driver period in the cities, right? I'm going to bring back normalcy. DeSantis can make that pitch a hell of a lot more credibly than Trump can. And in terms of the deep state, he has it on the free speech side. He's tried to legislate against tech company censorship in Florida. Like in terms of the weaponization of government, he can make that case that he's a fighter against that. It's the Ukraine military industrial complex stuff that he has a problem with. And that's something he's definitely going to have to figure his way out of. But, we're in agreement. Trump's poll numbers collapse. They take another look at Ron DeSantis. I think when they do, he's going to look pretty good on most of the issues that they care about. He does have to find a way out of his JAG lawyer past, I think.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Folks, you can help us out by going to patreon.com/do dissidents and supporting our show. We got our new patrons and paid substackers with their name up in lights on the third of these scrolls here. I want to thank you all for signing up. Our next patron exclusive live stream will be right at the end of the month. We'll pick an exact day. We have to work around our post-duopoly show commitment for that week, but we will do it for sure. Get 2 patron exclusive streams per month, as well as call-in access to all of our regularly scheduled live streams. That helps us out a great deal, as do our super chats. So we're going to read some of those. We will also read Rumble rants over on Rumble. We got 91 in the Rumble chat, 341 strong here in the YouTube chat. So a nice crowd this Friday morning. We will get to everything. Eric Housseau, wake and bake, check. Hot black coffee, check. Banana nut muffin, check. Do dissidents, check. Morning is set for a really good day. Well, we hope we're getting the day started off on the right foot for you, Eric Housseau, and you certainly are getting our day started on the right foot. Oh, yeah, that's right, we forgot. Oh, yeah. So, congratulations, Eric. Hope you're having a good start to your Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Patrick Donahue, thank you for the €20, my friend. That's very generous. Congrats on the 11K subs. Thank you. Just on last show, the Anderson, Cooper, and West. You can compare Grozny and Fallujah. They destroyed a city, and there are still kids born there with serious birth defects because of the U.S.'s criminal war. Yeah, that video that I made, the little Twitter video clip that I put about 30 seconds long, showing that it's absolutely appropriate to compare Grozny versus Iraq. If anything, the war crimes in Iraq were significantly worse. That reached 1 million views overnight. So that is up to 1 million. That's the first video we ever put out on any platform that reached that 1 million view
I noticed
milestone. Yeah. So 1 million views on that video.
I gotta say, man, last time I looked anyway, you have surprisingly low conversion to followers from that.
Yeah, we didn't get as many followers.
It didn't blow up our followers on Twitter the way you would expect 1 million to do.
Yeah, we got like a few hundred, which means like what, 1 in every 3,000 people who watched a video followed the account. Yeah, little low on that, but that's all right. We're getting there.
We really got to try to get ourselves canceled. That seems to be what gets your followers.
Exactly. That's the quickest way to success, is to get canceled, to get shut down.
Who do we threaten and misgender?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Who do we have to misgender to get more followers? To get more followers
around here. Yeah. Fucking thing sucks. Worst kill. Thanks for the $2. Waiting patiently for the Kuklinski beating. We're not covering that today. We're going to take a closer look at that. We might get into that Sunday, but that will be in the thumbnail.
What is this?
When he was talking about how you shouldn't go on Fox News make yourself a useful tool. I have to watch the whole video because I watched a clip that made the rounds, and it looked like at the end
it was kind of out of context. He was saying good on Cornell.
He was saying good on Cornell for not making himself a useful idiot. Like I said, I haven't watched the whole video yet. We've been extremely busy the last few days, in case you guys haven't noticed. So we've been trying to catch up to the more important news of the day, but we will perhaps get to that on Sunday. I have to watch the whole thing. I wouldn't want to just jump on a clip without watching the whole video. But I mean, his general point, which is that the Democrats are 1 trillion times better than the Republicans, and that's why black voters support them. I mean, that alone is something I would definitely take issue with. I don't know if that's worth doing a segment on, but we will take a look at it for sure. And thank you for the donation. Abiding 71, thanks for the 99-cent super sticker. We appreciate that, my friend, as always. Billy D, thanks for the $5. Folks, The super chats are super helpful, especially during these morning shows, because as Patrick Donahue mentions in a super chat down the road, we do miss work to do this. And so it really does help a lot when we get these super chats in here on the morning shows. That's what makes these morning shows possible. So thank you guys very much for your generosity this morning. Billy D, thanks for the AM broadcast. It helps me wean away from the increasingly toxic Democracy Now's anti-Russia, antiquated Eve Ensler feminism. I like that.
You know,
how do I get rid of this?
We really didn't have time for today. I might do it on Sunday. Over at the quartering, they started like a little newsletter thing. And apparently one of the guys who savaged Sound of Freedom, according to their reporting, was a spokesperson for one of these minor attracted people.
Like a NAMBLA type thing.
Like a NAMBLA type organization. I have to look into it. Somebody asked me last night, what do I think about Jeremy? This is how I would sum it up.
I think it's time for you to start to seriously consider salads.
It's my opinion of Jeremy, but once in a while he breaks something, so I will take a look at him.
Bonzo Beans over on Rumble gave us $1 and says he has nothing to say. But well, thanks for the $1. But I appreciate it.
At least you're honest.
At least you're honest.
We have so many people speaking with nothing to say.
Exactly. Although our super chatters, of course, have very, very important things to say, all of you folks, and we thank you guys very, very much. Here, I will take one more before we do our next segment, because it speaks to what I just said. Patrick Donahue, you're both putting in some hours for shows with lots of work off camera we don't see for shows. That's true. It must be a full-time job on top of your jobs. It's getting there. There. It's pretty much there. I mean, I would say I put as many hours into this show now as I do behind the wheel of the car.
Yeah, now now this is kind of 50-50 between touring and doing this.
Yeah, it's 50-50 for me too and that's what made last night's technical hiccup so frustrating, because we were like done in 2 hours and I was going to prep this show. And then we had to do another 45 minutes because of all that. And that really, it becomes very, very much a crunch when you have another show you got to turn around this quickly. But thank you for recognizing that. And that is absolutely true. And that's thanks to all you guys. I mean, we want to do this full-time. I don't want to be driving people's lunches around anymore. So this is all super helpful. So thank you very much. All right, folks, let's go. We have some more super chats we'll get to in a few minutes, but let's go now to topic number 2 of the day. This was a bit of a bombshell. How many times have we said the word bombshell in relation to the Hunter Biden laptop story? To the point where I'm not going to call this a bombshell, really. I'm going to call this a smoking gun, because I really think that that's what it is. As we know, the New York Post story was censored by Twitter in the run-up to the November 2020 presidential election, which alleged, proof of corruption found on Hunter Biden's laptop that he dropped off for repair and then never picked up. We know the story. Obviously, the first major Twitter files drop had to do with these various government officials signing a letter saying this has all the looks of a Russian disinfo plot. And we know that a lot of the people at Twitter were very, very skeptical of that, but they pulled it anyway because they were afraid. They didn't want to hand Trump another October surprise, the way the Comey letter was an October surprise that went in his favor in 2016. So we know basically the story there. We knew that Twitter was suspicious about the government's claims that this was Russian disinformation, but now you have proof that at least some at the FBI knew that the idea that this was a fake laptop was bogus all along. So the House Judiciary, GOP, tweeted this out yesterday morning. Big breaking news. Testimony reveals the FBI knew the Hunter Biden laptop was authentic, but when asked by a social media company about the laptop's authenticity, the FBI said, quote, no further comment. The rest is history. We're not going to read this whole thing, but I will read some of it here. On July 17th, 2023, the committee conducted a transcribed interview of Laura Demlow, the section chief of the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force. During her transcribed interview, Demlow revealed that the same FBI personnel who were warning social media companies about a potential Russian hack and leak operation in the run-up to the 2020 election knew that the laptop belonging to Hunter Biden was not Russian disinformation. After the New York Post broke a story based on the contents of the laptop about Biden family influence peddling, the FBI made the institutional decision to refuse to answer direct questions from the social media companies about the laptop's authenticity, despite months of constant information sharing up to that time. Put simply, after the FBI conditioned social media companies to believe that the laptop was the product of a hack and dump operation, the FBI stopped its information sharing, allowing social media companies to conclude that the New York Post story was, in fact, of course, Russian disinformation. So then they introduce, then they actually post the contents from the conversation itself here. So here is the interview. The committee recently conducted a transcribed interview of current FITF Section Chief Laura Demlow, who testified that by October 14th, 2020, the day the Post published its story on the contents of the Hunter Biden's laptop, the individual then serving as FITF Section Chief, Bradley Benavides, as well as individuals assigned to FITF's Russia unit, knew that Hunter Biden's laptop was real. So here's a section from that interview. The question, this is the cue at the bottom of the page. Are you familiar with the 2020 October New York Post story on Hunter Biden's laptop? Of course, I am. Do you recall whether any of these social media companies you were meeting with asked you any questions about it? I do. And what is your recollection? So I remember having a conversation with, or being involved in a conversation with Twitter, and I honestly can't recall if this was repeated to me. I might have been a few minutes late to the meeting, or if I was, I actually overheard it, but it was relayed to me later that somebody from Twitter, I don't recall who, I'm not sure who, somebody from Twitter essentially asked whether the laptop was real, and one of the FBI folks who was on the call did confirm that yes, it was, before another participant jumped in and said, no further comment. Okay, so whoever said no further comment was a few seconds too late.
No comment.
Right, because they already had on record that yes, it was. Do you recall who from the FBI said it was real? I do. And who was that? It's a non-senior executive service employee. I'd have to take that back, right? So there you go. I mean, that to me is one of the real smoking guns of the case. It kind of feels a little redundant to keep reporting on these developments because nothing seems to happen despite revelation after revelation proving what everybody already knew going in. And a little throwback to our first segment when it comes to the theme of this next presidential race being the deep state versus the people, right? Where it just really feels like every entrenched institution is circling around Joe Biden and the sort of top brass of the Democratic Party and protecting them from having to bear any responsibility for anything they do while money goes out the door to Ukraine. And there just seems to be an indifference, if not an overt hostility to the ordinary people of this country. And this fits very well in with that theme. There is a sense that the Democrats are just out of control, right? The deep state is just out of control. It's unhinged. It's unleashed. And there's no one there to stop it because you don't have a functional human being at the helm with any conscience about any of this. I mean, this is the irony. They talked about how Trump represented this existential threat to democracy because Trump actually comes out and makes outlandish claims about what he's going to do. We're going to throw you in jail for 10 years for spray painting a statue, or we're going to drain the swamp and all the stuff that comes with that.
Whatever comes off the top of his head.
Whatever comes off the top of his head. Biden, on the other hand, says
trouble
nothing.
With the media?
Right, having any trouble with the media? Biden, on the other hand, says nothing and just lets the Jake Sullivans, lets the faceless functionaries of the deep state run the show while doing nothing to actually stop them. And so in a very strong sense, I would say that's just as bad, just as threatening to the system, if not worse, because it all happens at a level we can't see. You know, when Trump makes his assaults on democracy, they're mostly just chest pounding. It's mostly just bluster. And to the extent that it's not bluster, it's visible because he's out there doing it. Here you just have a non-entity at the head of the executive branch, and you have all these little minions with their own agendas that we never get to know about because we don't vote for them. They don't give press conferences. They don't talk to anybody. They just run everything, it seems, right? It seems like now.
Well, and in the latest chapter in the ongoing tragedy that is AOC, if anything, our movement, by empowering AOC, we created a foe 1,000 times more dangerous over time than Nancy Pelosi, because she went up there, unlike Pelosi, crabby old cunt that she is. She would have just gone up there and said, "This is just terrible, the way that you're showing Hunter's cock like that." Whereas AOC goes up there and she's a lot slicker than that. She's a lot more personable. She and her she got the closing statement in these hearings, which included Hunter's junk. And she said to the whistleblowers, "I believe that you're really honorable, good people, and you're trying to do the right thing. But it's very common among prosecutors to have different opinions about charges. And I understand that you're disappointed that they didn't pursue the charges that you wanted. And it's very common for people to say no comment with an ongoing investigation." She's putting this very, no, I'm a progressive, so I get it. I'm not smearing you. I'm not attacking you, but I'm saying you're basically disgruntled that they didn't handle this the way that you wanted them to handle it, right? It's much more insidious than a Pelosi or a Schumer and their rather transparent assault they would make on the witnesses, right? The way that she handled it was a lot smoother, actually. Like, as she gets older and she comes into her power, she's going to be far worse than Nancy Pelosi ever was. She's going to be a far more formidable opponent for any real left movement.
All right, let's go to some super chats here. Thank you guys for your generosity this morning. Saul Good figured I'd chip in. Here's $7 after Google takes their cut. Thank you for that. We appreciate that, my friend. Thank you very much. Courtney Conover, Clopen Assistance. Beautiful. Thank you. Some coffee. See, I got some coffee today. This mug was actually made by someone who used to work the craft shows with us. He's a great guy. He made all this pottery. The name of his pottery company was called Clays of Our Lives. I thought that was a very, very witty name. Black Freud, I like this one. Thank you for the $5. So Keaton is a soul brother and Russell is a Genghis Khan. Sneaky VOCs. Nice, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we're
mystery solved. Mystery solved.
We say we're Jew passing.
Yeah, right. Exactly. These bitches want Nikes. Thank you for the $10. First time contributor. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can you guys maybe talk about having right-wingers like me in your audience? I used to be a Vanguardian before they showed their true colors. They showed me y'all, though. Oh, they did? Were you introduced to our show through them? Well, yeah, I can't imagine their audience is too viewpoint diverse at this point. I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know. Like you just said, this is your first time here giving a super chat, so I don't know what your politics are. But we have a very viewpoint diverse audience, and we're very, very happy about that. And so, I mean, we've talked about that in the past, but it's not an audience we court. I mean, our take on that country music video pissed a lot of them off, which is fine, But the thing that I've always found about the right-wing audience is they're more willing to get pissed off at you for a few minutes and then let it go and come back because they appreciate that you're giving your honest take. Whereas you get on the wrong side of some of these lib-adjacent lefties and they will just have a tantrum and never tune in again.
I couldn't believe what they said about that.
Right.
God damn it.
Exactly.
Yeah, not if you look at, I mean, I've been going back and forth with them a little bit in the comments on the Jason Aldean video. But no, they're not. It's not like going back and forth with libs. Like most of their comments will be prefaced with "I like most of your takes." Like there haven't been a lot of those kind of just very emotional attacks. And even when I've come back and been like, that's not really a fair analysis. They've been like, hey, we agree more than we disagree. Yeah, like it hasn't been like debating libs. Libs, you disagree with them, you are fundamentally morally evil. Evil.
Right.
Not even just wrong, not just a difference of opinion. You are evil. You must be stamped out. They're locked into a witch hunt mentality. That's what it is. That is the mentality of the witch hunt, because they only deal with and talk to other people like them. That might be part of it. I mean, that may be part of why they only talk to people who have a college degree, right? Because the colleges, as we were talking a little bit about this on the Patreon stream last night, universities always leaned liberal, but not like now. Not like 1990, it was something like 3-2 or 4-1 liberal to conservative. Now it's like 9-1. So anybody who goes through that system of education is likely to come out the other side, not with left politics, with liberal politics. Right. And they move into the professions, and so many of the commentators in this space come from that background and share that point of view, which is, as we can see from having conservatives in our audience, from the fact that Jimmy has a lot of conservatives in their audience, real leftism is not repellent necessarily to people who consider themselves conservative. Liberalism is, but it's repellent to the real left as well.
Right. Indeed. We got a Rumble rant here from Sam Fish X. Thank you for the $10. I have nothing clever or insightful to say, so please have some dough. I do like how I can super chat on Rumble on my phone, which I can't on YouTube. That's interesting. I don't know. I have to get in touch with technical support, but thank you for the $10, Sam Fish X. We appreciate that. Thank you for the Rumble rants. Let's do one more here. Go on. Have a few yo-yos. Thank you, Seamus O'Connell. We appreciate that. I'm assuming you're coming to us from across the pond.
In
one of our Irish brothers over there.
City where girls are so pretty.
Indeed. All right, folks, moving right along here. This is a segment that our right-wingers in the audience will love. John Kerry busted for climate hypocrisy. So last week, U.S. climate envoy John Kerry testified before the House Foreign Affairs Committee's subcommittee on oversight and accountability. So here's a couple of clips from the hearing in which John Kerry was confronted about his use of private jets, first by Florida's 7th District Congressman Corey Mills, and then by Florida's 6th District Congressman Mike Waltz. So the neighbors down there in Florida getting their digs in against John Kerry. I made a couple of edits here for time. I'll announce where they are just for transparency's sake, but here we go.
For coming here, I hope it wasn't too problematic for your operational team and your private jet to get here. So
okay, so that was just let me just replay that.
That's a little drive-by.
Yeah, a little drive-by.
Kerry, thank you so much for coming here. I hope it wasn't too problematic for your operational team and your private jet to get here. So
between that and this clip that we're about to play, there was a little back and forth about Kerry's upcoming trip to China, which there's been some news about that where the Chinese have basically been a little ambivalent as to how cooperative they're going to be in reducing their carbon offsets, right? Those talks have kind of stalemated. This was on July 13th in the run-up to that trip. So that's what they talked about for 5 minutes. But then Kerry, it's interesting because there was about 5 minutes that went by of back and forth between when he took that little drive-by shot and when Kerry decides to go after him. If John Kerry were smart, he'd have just not acknowledged it. But he felt a need to actually pick a fight over the private jet accusation. That guy didn't grill him about the private jet. He just gave a little drive-by shot, and that could have been everything. Kerry, throughout this exchange, is committed to digging his own grave on this issue. So here we go.
And I just want to say, this is something I was thinking about when I was watching this. Yes, there were a lot of shenanigans with the Bush 2000 and 2004 campaigns. Absolutely. At the same time, one of the reasons that they were able to rig it, and they did rig it in both elections. There was a lot of funny shit with Ohio in 2004. Did it make the difference? We don't know as much as we do about Florida. But the candidates that the Democrats ran were fucking cringy. Gore. The best description of Gore I ever heard was he came off like an effeminate android.
Right.
And Kerry, this is Kerry. Well, I was for it before I was against it. Or his all-time classic, who amongst us does not love NASCAR? he was awful. He was that was Kerry as a candidate. So yeah, they fucked around in those elections, but at the same time, the candidates that the Democrats fielded were awful.
Yeah, and here he is 20 years later. Like, they haven't really shown this guy the door. He's one of these guys who just sticks around. He's like the Mitt Romney of the Republican Party, right? They can never just be rid of him, right? He's a loser, yeah, but they could just never be rid of him, right? Goes from Secretary of State on Obama's second term, and now here he is, climate envoy. Here we go.
I just don't agree with your facts, which began with the presentation of one of the most outrageously persistent lies that I hear, which is this private jet. We don't own a private jet. I don't own a private jet. I personally have never owned a private jet. And obviously, it's pretty stupid to talk about coming in a private jet from the State Department up here. It just, honestly.
Nobody's talking about coming in a private jet. This isn't the Jeffrey Epstein hearing. We're talking about that. Get it straight, all right?
If that's where you want to go there.
All right, so if that's where you want to go there. So then, later on in the hearing, this is Florida's 6th District Congressperson Mike Waltz digging this back up because Kerry opened it up again by giving that retort, by saying under oath, no, I don't fly in a private jet.
Mr. Secretary,
you can tell this is later on in the hearing because a lot of people have bailed. A lot of empty chairs.
In exchange with Mr. Mills, you just testified under oath that you never owned a private jet. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record article here from February 15th of 2023. The John Kerry family private jet was sold shortly after accusations of climate hypocrisy. Mr. Secretary, do you stand?
Okay, so not only did you have a private jet, but you sold it after accusations of climate hypocrisy, right? Okay. So
that just shows you what lying scumbags these people are, because Kerry knows what he's doing here. Yeah. The indignation. I never owned a private jet, and he knows in the back of his mind, well, my wife owned it. Right. Okay. Yeah. He was hoping nobody would bring the receipts.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. His wife has been the breadwinner. This is a major, that was the big joke he made in the 2004 campaign about how both he and George Bush married up because George W. Bush married Laura, who sort of inspired him to, kick the booze and the coke habit and sort of pull himself together. And then the joke was that Kerry got rich because he married the heir to the Heinz ketchup fortune. So who knows? Maybe they don't file joint tax returns. So maybe it's technically the case that it's hers and not his. But it's the family plane. Come on. It's the family plane.
Well, that's like the mob. That's what the mob does.
Exactly, yeah.
It was very easy for me to disappear. I never registered to vote, and everything was in my wife's name.
Right, exactly.
And by that testimony that you've never owned or
I personally,
your family.
Personally, yes, my wife owned a plane, and she sold the plane.
You flew on a plane.
My wife owned a plane. Well, yeah, no, my wife owned a plane. I like how he doesn't say my wife owned a jet. He says she owned a plane.
Who amongst us does not have a spouse who owns a plane?
Who owns a plane? I like the choice of words there. He says my wife owns a plane. He doesn't say she owns a jet. A plane. What does she have? One of the Indiana Jones planes with the snake in it? No, she owns a jet.
She got a crop duster.
Right, exactly. Yeah, crop duster, right. She's got a private jet. That's what your wife owns, a private jet.
Not in a number of years, but I have flown on it,
and
sure.
This article is not then inaccurate, that your family owned a plane, you flew on a plane.
My wife...
Mr. Secretary,
my wife owned
here's
the
the issue.
My wife owns
this
the
isn't
plane.
some kind of partisan gotcha. When we are asking Americans to make serious sacrifices as we transition for the common good, and your family and or yourself are flying around on private jets, that smacks of hypocrisy. It actually hurts your cause, Mr. Secretary, but I'll move on. I just want to know from a
move on. Look, he goes back. He doesn't let it go. Even now, again, he's like, well, wait a minute. Hold on a second. I know you just busted me in what is at best just a really, really bold-faced hypocrisy. At worst, a lie under oath, right? But no, I'm going to go back, right? So this is both times they mentioned the private jet and they tried to get off it, and he tries again to go back.
Right.
It just
At
digs
least
even
to
further.
Set the record straight here. I do not fly on a private jet. I do not fly. I fly commercially.
Have you
on
flown
all
on a
of my
private jet since you've taken this?
I don't even order the red wine on the flight. I drink Pepsi and eat peanuts. Because that's what a man of the people I am.
One time I had the Salisbury steak.
Exactly.
Just let me finish. I have flown 5 times in the last 2.5 years on Millair.
I don't
which
check
you
my
also
bags.
fly on.
I take carry-on.
Or some of you who travel fly on. 5 times.
I keep my suitcase on my lap throughout the flight. That's how much of a man of the people I am. I won't check it under no circumstances.
I have a bandana tied to the end of a stick, as was typical of hobos in the Great Depression.
Otherwise, all of my trips are commercial
Have you
airlines.
flown on a private jet in a personal or official capacity since you've taken this position?
Possibly once.
Yeah.
I don't. I think. I just don't. I'm trying to think. Of
I
the
think
date.
you need to take the broader point of how this appears to the American people
But no,
as we're asking them to
here,
take
let me
that.
tell you why.
We're
not asking Americans. We're not asking Americans not to fly.
You know,
you're trying to create an unequal thing. We're not.
No, you're trying to create an unequal thing by saying we're not asking Americans not to fly. Now, it's not the case that all Americans are capable of flying private because it's extremely expensive. But that's a real miscategorization of the argument, right? I mean, nobody's saying people shouldn't fly. You are asking Americans to make sacrifices, right? I mean, you can't get a plastic bag anymore in a grocery store. As someone who works in the grocery delivery business, that is a pain in the ass.
It's kind of
to
a
me.
fucking pain in the ass.
So kind of a fucking pain in the ass, right? When I make a drop off now, when I drop off someone's Instacart, I got to make 5 trips back and forth to the car. You know, in the old days, what can you do? You lift all the paper bags, right? You've all seen the images, right? Your fingers turn purple because you just lift 10 plastic bags and you carry them all in. Now I can't do that, right? That's time. Time is money, okay? So you're asking people like me to sacrifice with the fucking paper bag bullshit. And meanwhile, you're flying around in the private jets. It looks bad. John Kerry was asked about this earlier this year by Yahoo News. Let's hear his explanation in defense of private jets flying into places like Davos and all these, you know, COP27, COP28 climate conferences, things like that.
You don't just bring your own bags?
What's that?
You don't just bring your own bags? I mean,
when I shop for myself, I bring my own
You're
bags.
in that line of work.
No, when I shop for myself, I bring my own bags. But when I am delivering people's groceries, no, we have to take the paper bags from the store. Because how else would I get the bags? I can't buy bags to deliver
because they're
to people.
already packing them.
Well, no, I buy the groceries and I check out. I have to bring the groceries to the customer.
Right.
So I have to take the bags that they give me, the paper bags. Because I can't afford to go out of pocket for 5 bags every order.
Gotcha.
Then I wouldn't make nothing. Yeah. All right, here we go.
Switched, I read, from flying. You recently switched, I read, from flying private to flying commercial.
No, I didn't fly private while I was in this job.
Oh, okay.
It's just
maybe
misnomer.
once.
I've had one, maybe 2 private flights, which were U.S. military flights in order to get to China.
His family plane, whether he was on the plane or not.
Just the tip of the plane that I was on.
His family plane logged about 300 metric tons of carbon output in the first 18 months of the Joe Biden White House years. Now, whether he was on those planes or not, we don't know. Maybe his wife was flying around on them, but the family plane, the John Kerry family plane, whatever it was, the Teresa Hines family plane, was active over the past few years. It wasn't sitting around, you know, with no sort of carbon footprint.
We were introducing a new Dijon flavored ketchup in the south of France. It was very important for her to go and taste it personally. And I think you'll agree that Heinz ketchup has a special umami, and it's worth the trip.
Exactly. Sorry, I got to flag that comment for later.
China during COVID, where we were forced into that, but I fly commercially.
The reason I bring that up is private aviation is an example of something where people are starting to pay more attention, and but when people who go to Davos to talk about climate change fly private, it seems like they don't want to make
Well, they actually, I've talked to them about it. They offset. They buy offsets, they offset, and they are working harder than most people I know to be able to try to affect this transition.
Right.
Okay, they buy offsets and they offset, and they're working harder than most people I know to try to affect this transition. That means what a lot of people say it means, which is they lecture other people to reduce their carbon footprint. That's what gives them license to have a big carbon footprint themselves, because they work to solve the problem. So they deserve the luxury of a private jet, because on balance, all the great work they're doing, all the great messaging they're putting out, all the real solid information they're putting out on this issue compensates, tenfold for the carbon footprint of a private jet. So he's on record saying, rich people fly around in private jets to various conferences where they talk about the dangers of environmental catastrophe. But because they're doing that work of spreading the word, that justifies their use of the private jet. He said it there. Whatever your calculation is, he's said it right there.
And if they were buying offsets because they get this criticism so consistently, they would have already demonstrated that. They would have, and that would have been all over the media. Look, this is how we offset the use of this, and you haven't heard of it. So he can say whatever shit he wants. If they were really offsetting that carbon every time they use a private jet to go to Davos, we would have heard about it, because the right wing, they're all over that shit. And there's nothing they like better than to knock down right wing talking points, right? Every time Davos happens, the right wing is all over the private jets. If they were really buying offsets, you would have heard about it. This is now, maybe they tell Kerry that, and maybe Kerry chooses to believe it, even though I think he's a smart enough guy to know better. But hey, man, it is that kind of hypocrisy that really fuels a lot of the rage at these climate movements. You've got in Europe, they're trying to limit what farmers can do. They're protesting. And so how do you make that case to them when it is clear that people like John Kerry, who are running around talking about this, much less the cast of characters at Davos, they're living large. They're living large. How many gardens do they have at their homes that are unnecessary? How much fertilizer are they using? How much carbon do they emit every year? What are they doing to offset that? It's just clear that they want you eating bugs, and they're still going to be eating steak.
Right, exactly. And not only does that fuel a certain rage, but it also, nothing can foster climate skepticism like that, because these people say out of one side of their mouth, this is an existential issue that affects all of humanity. And then on the other side of the mouth, they don't take it seriously enough to adjust their own behavior, which does account for a lot. It's not it's one thing if John Kerry were caught with a plastic bag, because plastic bags don't, in the grand scheme of things, don't make a huge difference. One guy's plastic bag. Private jets, that kind of stuff actually does put a tremendous amount of carbon into the atmosphere. The top 1% of people on Earth in terms of wealth and income generate something like, I don't know, I don't remember what the exact number is, so I won't try and guess, but I feel very comfortable saying a vastly disproportionate amount of carbon into the atmosphere. The richest 1% of people on Earth put more than 10% of the carbon into the atmosphere that's there. So it's very outsized.
Getting away from those individuals, we know 11 corporations are responsible for 80% of the emissions.
Right.
11.
There you go.
It's not you with your fucking plastic bags. So people can be forgiven if they believe that there is a global conspiracy of Davos aligned elites to turn us all into sexless, genderless, impoverished bug eaters, because the evidence certainly points in that direction.
Exactly. Dave Delarai, thanks for the $5. Just saw a pic of Glenn Greenwald, Sagar, Lee Fong, and Brianna Joy Gray posing with Glenn's kids, announcing that they are now godparents of the kids. I did see that picture. That's a great photo. I guess he's appointing several godparents because he appointed the Red Scare podcast hosts as godparents too, which we covered last night, because I got into a little fight about that with a psycho that I didn't want to cover on the main show because, it's Glenn's family stuff. And I very innocently liked a photo where he made them the godparents. And then if you go on our social media there, you'll see it. Some psycho took issue with the fact that he picked the wrong godparents for his kids. And, I didn't want to give that oxygen on the public channel. I don't want to gossip like that about his family matters. But pretty deranged.
That's how much class we have. He hasn't asked us, which is a little insulting, but we're still defending him.
Right.
We're still defending his choices.
Right. He hasn't made me the godfather. Jewel in the Machine, thanks for the $10. We appreciate that very much. Britsman, thank you for the $2. What'll you beef with Vanguards about now that they dropped Marianne Williamson? Did they drop Marianne Williamson? I didn't see that.
In what way did they? The last I saw, they were tweeting out Hassan interviewing her. So they were
I think that was yesterday.
Chilling for her as recently as yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. But thanks for the tip on that, Britsman, and thanks for the donation. The Brocialist, thank you for the $4.99. Debbie Wasserman Schultz always looks and acts like she was just swirly moments before the start of each congressional hearing. We're going to get to Debbie Wasserman Schultz and RFK a bit later on the show, but thank you, Brocialist, for the $4.99. We appreciate that very much. Dave Delarai, thank you. I couldn't post a text of Frank Reynolds when he explains politics in the opening of The Gang Runs for Office. You couldn't post the text? Would you have to copy and paste? Does that exceed a character limit? But you can, Dave, I think you're a Patreon member, right? Send it to us in the Patreon, and we'll give it a read. Or email us. Brocialist, thanks for the $4.99, and thanks, Dave, for the donation. God save the Queen, man. God save the Queen. Indeed. Thanks, Mr. Fancy Pants, for the super sticker. We appreciate that very much. And Billy D, did you see Cornell evaporate Nina Turner when asked why not run as a revolutionary Democrat? Incredulity meets stupidity, and stupidity always loses. I didn't see that interview yet. I have not seen the Cornell interview with Nina Turner.
After what she's been through, she fucking said that to him?
Yeah, she suggested he run as a revolutionary Democrat.
How'd that work out for you, Nina?
Good plan.
How'd that work? Not a great plan.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, did he give her a tough answer? That would be good if he gave her a tough answer. He needs to start getting as tough with Anderson Cooper as he does with Nina Turner, though, if that's the case.
Saul here says they're on the West train.
Who's on the West train? Oh, the Vanguard guys?
The Vanguardians, yeah.
I had a feeling they would be come general election season. It's just a matter of, how quickly people can make that switch. Billy D, thanks for the $5. Oh, no, you just said that already. Sorry about that. Oh, Don Fairfield. This is just a regular chat. Keaton, you could buy bags, but you correctly do not want to. I have reusable shopping bags that I use for my personal shopping. When I work Instacart, so when I deliver other people's stuff, I can't spend money on shopping bags and give them to the customer because then I'll be spending $3 or $4 per job on bags. But yeah, I do personally have reusable bags that I use when I do personal shopping. For myself. All right, so we mentioned Nancy Pelosi a little bit earlier in the show here. In her latest appearance on Morning Joe this week, Nancy Pelosi laughed off concerns about Biden's age and functionality. So here we go. Here's Nancy Pelosi on Morning Joe when the topic of Joe Biden's age comes up.
Republicans and Democrats running the House.
I want to ask Speaker Pelosi about 2024. You talked a lot about President Biden's successful presidency so far, all the points on the board. It's a long list. I think arguably, objectively, one can say he has accomplished a great deal, maybe even historic proportions. But there's the question I have for you as a honoree on the very first 50 over 50 list with Forbes and Know Your Value. A lot of people are talking about the president's age as a factor in this, especially Republicans. What do you make of the criticism the president is getting that he's too old to have a second term?
I think the president should embrace his age, his experience, the knowledge that he brings to the job. Actually, the leader on the other side is not much younger. Well, I don't like to use his name, but you know who I mean. He's not that much younger.
Very mature.
So
very mature.
Age is a relative thing.
It's not like he's likely to be the president again.
Hang on. Keep that. Hold on.
From the cringe.
I don't like to use his name, but he's not much younger. She goes on.
It is, and I think this president, our country is very well served by his leadership. Again, his experience, his knowledge, and it counts for a lot. He really, under his first 2 years in office, and I take some credit for that in terms of congressional Democrats having the courage to go out there and vote for some of these things which were being mischaracterized by the other side, it was record-breaking, and we have more. There's still more work to be done in terms of women in the workplace and the rest. So we want him to do his unfinished business. I couldn't be prouder of him, and again, we're very fortunate that he is in that position. But again, age is relative. I was in L.A. For some Democratic stuff recently, and I met with Norman Lear, who's 100, going on 101. He was telling me some new shows he was involved in. I was meeting with Frank Kerry, a 90-something architect, showing me new buildings he's building throughout the world. And they were like, 80s. He's a kid.
He's a kid, but okay, the thing is, it's not just that he's old, it's that he's old and showing his age. Like, yeah, you're going to find exceptionally gifted and talented people who, yeah, they'll have it at 100, right? Henry Kissinger is still sharp at 100. Not an endorsement of Kissinger, but yeah, you can find functional people.
Nobody is producing anything that Norman Lear is fucking talking about.
Right.
As a TV show, okay? Norman Lear can say whatever the fuck he wants. I'm sure there are a lot of people around Hollywood who, out of respect for his legacy, will take a meeting with him. They're not producing his fucking shows. That's a courtesy, right? If they take his calls at all. Geary, right. I mean, I don't know, maybe. I mean, but you know, you don't just put up a building. He could have designed those fucking buildings 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, but like either way, the fact that there are some people who remain with it well into very old age is not a legitimate or convincing retort to the accusation that Biden is too old for this shit, because he's showing that he's too old for this shit. It's not just that he's 80; it's that he's 80 and he sounds like he's 95, right? I mean, that's the criticism. It's not just a numbers thing. It's that he's showing his age more and more every day, every week. And here she goes on.
But again, it's relative. He's younger than I am, so he's a kid to me as well. The president is. So I don't think
he's a kid to me. This seems like the kind of clip,
I look. I don't even blame her, man. Politician's going to politician, but these fucking disgusting pigs on the left over here, these fucking propagandists, oh my god, man, they're just fucking disgusting people to sit there and actually try to normalize having these clearly demented people continue in office. Like, it's no big deal. Fucking pigs.
Well, this is the thing, man. Like, when I saw this clip, there are certain clips that I see that I sort of bookmark in my mind as clips to, like, replay once an election goes sideways, right? Like, I could very much see us playing this clip again on our election night broadcast when Biden's getting creamed. And hey, remember this? Remember when, he's a kid. You know, a year and a half later, you have this guy who could barely stand up, barely speak, just getting absolutely rolled. 35, 40 states go red. This is a perfect clip to play. Well, see, remember this? Remember this? Oh, he's a kid to me. I mean, Pelosi, far from a coherent person in my view, but she's 10 times more capable of running for president than Biden is. She could speak to a person. Like, it's not just the number. It is, how you come off. And it's just the gaslighting is just so incredible. This is how the libs get to be libs, because this is what they watch. Like, could you imagine watching this and thinking, oh, yeah, that's right, that's true. Pelosi's old. Hey, Frank Gary's in his 90s, so why can't Biden run for president again?
Well, that's why when you debate libs, they'll make these fucking just batshit crazy fucking arguments. And you're just like, how do you believe that? This is how. This is how. When you get these libs to go, Yeah, Biden makes gaffes. That's Biden. Where'd they get that from? They got that here. They got that from MSNBC. They normalize. They don't look at the fact that his stutter has a peculiar racist bent. That's just Joe. That's just Joe. And also ableism. He has a stutter. Damn it. That seems to say cringeworthy things about people of color every time it comes out.
Right, exactly.
And Scarborough, actually, back in my lib days, back when I used to watch shit like this and take it seriously, Scarborough, when Obama won in 2012, and if you remember, Rove very famously went on Fox News and just refused to accept what the numbers people were saying at Fox.
Oh, yeah, that was epic.
And there was a lot of, fake sympathy coming from the media for the Republican voters who had been deceived by their media. And Scarborough made a statement that I thought was apropos at the time, and I still say it was true. He said Republican voters have been deceived by a lot of media figures for whom this is a business model to tell them what they want to hear. And it was true about Mitt Romney. I mean, anyone could have seen the writing on the wall. The only people who were surprised he lost, I think, were people in that Fox bubble. They definitely led them down the primrose path to think they had a shot with this fucking guy. But, Scarborough and Mika, they are probably, if not the greatest, one of the greatest examples of that kind of propagandizing to liberal voters on TV.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And it's funny because during the 2016 cycle, they had a couple of moments where they tried to, at the very least, referee it properly, like when Bernie blew Hillary out in Wyoming, but the delegate thing was tied. Scarborough said, this is voter disenfranchisement. If I were Bernie Sanders, I'd tell him, go to hell. I'm running as an independent, right? So they have their certain moments because Joe Scarborough is now post-Trump. He's like a never Trump Republican, which means he functions as a Democrat. That's what they all function as right now. I mean, the Lincoln Project is cutting ads for Biden now. At the time, he was actually a disaffected conservative without much loyalty to the Democratic Party either. So it allowed him to occasionally, call it as he saw it. But now, this is what I mean. Once these guys, because these neocon Republican types, these establishment Republican types, all Reagan Republicanism is about, certainly all George W. Bush Republicanism is about, it's only about money for these. Like, that is not really a political ideology as much as it is an interest set. Like, these people only act in their own interest. There's no ideological conviction or vision behind any of that. With the Trump thing, there is. That's more of a nationalist
It's basically
ideology.
Libertarian. It's, values are for families and communities.
Yeah, and money is for me, right? And so once they start getting paid, they're just going to keep doing what they have to do to get paid. If that means supporting moderate Democrats who aren't going to tax them too much, they'll do, they have no problem making that pivot. That's easy for them. It's easiest thing in the world. And that's what they are now, obviously. No question about it. All right, let's take some more super chats. We have one more segment to do. We are running on schedule this morning, which is great. Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $5. John Kerry, damn it, I have to fly by private jet. Have you seen who is transportation secretary? I'm cost otherwise. Exactly.
True.
Exactly. Can't trust the airways anymore. Bennett Weiss, that's my dad. Thank you, Dad. Keaton, get a rubber bin to put all the bags in so you carry them all at once and stop aid to Ukraine. Well, I'm not giving Ukraine any of my
time.
I'm not giving.
I don't think he can carry a rubber bin and stop aid to Ukraine at the same time.
I mean, I'm not sending Zelensky my tip, so I'm not giving aid to Ukraine. But that's a good point about the bin. You take a big plastic bin, load the bags in, and then just make one trip to the door, empty the bin. That's a good idea. I'll take that. I think that's actually pretty smart. Thank you. Thanks for the advice. Pickle the Pirate, thanks for the $5. Russ, your hysterical liberal voice shtick is perfect for a parody account. LOL. I love every time you do it. I laugh out loud. Should make a series of takes with that persona. Well, we have talked about workshopping a character. We've talked about
doing like Myron Applebaum does the news.
Exactly. We have talked about that
from the Upper West Side.
Yeah.
He would have like a Vicks rub vaporizer in the background.
Exactly.
I've got a little cold. Forgive me. I'm a little verklempt today.
Exactly. John Kerry is fake and liar. Why are they surprised? Well, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. He's one of these guys that they just keep around, no matter what. Like some guys you just can't get out of town. They just won't take the gold watch, just they find ways to keep him relevant. The top half of Kerry's face is pale and a different color than the lower half, says Sam Fish X. Thanks for the donation. This is a Rumble rant. You'd think he could afford a proper skin suit made of all that ketchup cashews.
I mean, to be fair, I think he's the only one in Washington who didn't fly on Epstein's plane, probably because he had his own. He didn't need it.
Right, exactly. Didn't need the flights over there. All righty, folks. We will keep going here. We'll take a couple more of this. KN Kareem, thanks for the $4.99. Instacart charges the customers on their end for the bags. Yes, you don't have to buy the bags for your client, Keaton. No, I understand how it works. Yeah. But you don't want to buy reusable bags on their behalf without checking with them, because then they'll get charged $5 extra for bags. Or if you bring them paper bags, they only get charged 5 cents. So I don't want to take it upon myself to purchase bags for them, because then they get overcharged and then they could complain, right? At Walmart doesn't give bags anymore. You have to buy the bag. So at Walmart, it's assumed that the customer is going to get charged for bags. So at Walmart, I do it. But at the other places, I take the paper so that they don't complain that they got extra charges. See, this is what I mean. We need to do a panel about how all this shit works. I could convene a panel. So I'll let you guys know.
A lot of our people do that.
A lot of people do it, and they're curious about it. Yeah.
70% of our audience is incarcerated. The other 30% are delivery drivers.
Right. And once you get out of the joint, getting an off the books gig as a pizza delivery driver, is probably one of the easiest ways to get hired. So maybe it'll prove itself useful. Ellen Jimerson, I'm sorry to read this, Ellen. In memory of sweet Melissa's sister-in-law, breast cancer, followed by ovarian, followed by pelvic. Oh, my God. 59 years old. Making second donation to an animal shelter. Well, good on you, Ellen. Love each other hard, settle scores, cut each other lots of slack. Well, we're very sorry to hear that, Ellen. And Ellen. Best wishes to the family, to your husband, and everybody. That's terrible to hear. A friend of my mom's just died of cancer pretty suddenly. We didn't even know she was sick. She was fairly young too. She was I think in her early 60s. So yeah, terrible thing. Very sorry to hear that, Ellen, but thank you for chiming in and thank you for the donation. Of course, thank you for your support. And I remember you were going to deal with something a couple weeks back. I guess that's what it was related to. And so I'm sorry to hear that that happened. So very sorry for your loss, Ellen, but thank you for letting us know.
Sorry, Ellen.
Okay, so should we get into our final segment of the day here? This is the big one, folks. A lot of shit to sort through.
If we get into our final segment, we're going to end on time, and that could have consequences for the structure of the universe itself.
Yeah, right. Well, don't say we're going to end on time. This one could take a little while because there's a lot to get to here.
True.
Yeah, right. This is a real fucking pain in the ass segment featuring a lot of people I don't particularly like. So, this is like the Reservoir Dogs segment where there are no good people in this segment. There's no heroes in this segment.
There's like a peck and paw Western.
Exactly. Yeah, just a bunch of assholes in this segment here. We're talking, of course, about the censorship hearings where the Democrats began by trying to censor RFK and therefore limit his ability to testify about the censorship that his campaign has been victimized by. So the way this began was Debbie Wasserman Schultz invoked some rule where if you defame people, then they can basically take the hearing out of the public eye and sort of do it behind closed doors. That's what she tried to make happen at the beginning of the hearing. So if we take a look, she makes the motion, and then the way the motion was finally voted on was very, very confusing. The yes votes were the votes that the Republicans took, which was a vote to keep the hearing public, and then the no votes were the votes that the Democrats took to not keep the hearing public. Kind of confusing semantically, but you'll get the drift here.
Votes been moving to executive session. We're waiting for the clerks. Is violative of Rule 11, Clause 2.
Let me back this up a little bit. Fucking pain in the ass segment.
I have a motion on the table There's a motion and the vote's been called. Executive session. We're waiting for the clerks. Is violative of Rule 11, Clause 2. Waiting for the clerks. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan.
Yes.
Mr. Jordan votes yes. Mr. Issa. Mr. Massey.
Yes to not censor.
Yes
Mr.
to not
Massey
censor.
votes
So
yes.
yes to keep the hearing public. Okay, so all the Republicans vote yes. That goes on for about 40 seconds. That's kind of boring. Here's the Democrats.
So Wasserman Schmuck, she wanted to put this in closed chambers on the grounds that the committee rules are that if a person is likely to present speech that is offensive or
harmful,
insulting or harmful, so on the grounds of the possibility of anti-Semitic comments, she wanted to put this behind closed doors. But the overall effect of it is she made a plea for censorship at an anti-censorship committee hearing.
Right, exactly. And she'll restate her intentions in a clip that we'll play in a minute. So you'll get that straight from the horse's mouth in just a minute. But here are all the Democrats saying no to keep the hearing public.
Ms. Hageman votes yes. Ms. Pasquette.
No, I want to follow the rules that the Republicans made at the beginning of this conference with these House rules, so no.
Ms. Pasquette votes no. Mr. Lynch. No. Mr. Lynch votes no. Ms. Sanchez.
No, because it's violative of the rules.
Ms. Sanchez votes no. Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
No to allowing a witness to degrade and
This is not
defame
speech
others
time.
and violate
Yeah,
the
they all
rules
bitch. I mean,
and
not all
not
of them,
have
but-
his testimony and degradation amplified
Mr. Chair.
rather than given in executive session.
Ms. Wasserman Schultz votes no. Mr. Connolly.
No to the Soviet Politburo.
Mr. Connolly votes no. Mr. Garamendi. No. Mr. Garamendi votes
Wouldn't
no.
it be the Soviet
Yeah, that's what I don't
Politburo
understand.
that would
Yeah.
go into the back room? And by the way, that's the guy.
Yeah, no to the Soviet Politburo. Let's kick the cameras out and do this in private.
Like, what the fuck is he? What kind of comparison is that? By the way, that's the guy who basically called RFK a disgrace to his family's legacy.
Oh, this guy?
That was the guy.
Oh, okay.
Garamendi.
No.
Mr. Garamendi votes no. Mr. Allred.
Not there.
Ms. Garcia. No. Ms. Garcia votes no. Mr. Goldman.
Dan
No
Goldman.
to hate speech.
Mr. Goldman
Levi
votes
Jeans
no.
boy. No to hate speech. Okay, there you go. Okay, so before we go any further, this is part of what I mean whenever I talk about the themes of this election shaping up as the weaponization of the government. This is exactly what I mean. Like, the Democrats just they're just out of control. They act as if no one can or will hold them accountable for just running roughshod over people. You're at a censorship hearing, you make a motion to do it behind closed doors, and you cite what all the social media companies cite when they're going to silence somebody, right? Hate speech, disinformation, blah, blah, blah. And they just say it as if no one is capable of mounting any kind of challenge to them. That just gives the impression that they are against people's rights to self-expression and right to speech, and they do not care. They do not care about coming off that way. They'll come off that way in public.
Well, because they've conditioned their base to see freedom of speech as a right-wing cause. They have very effectively managed to detach their voters from the ACLU ideal.
Right.
If we do it to them, they can do it to us. So we have to protect freedom of speech. It's a core civil right. They've completely buried that idea. I think you have an entire generation that doesn't even understand that that's core to leftism.
Yeah, and it's really a scary thing. It's a terrifying thing that they're doing this as nakedly as they are, and it's a terrifying thing that there is no one who's really in a position to stop them, that you really feel good that they can actually stop them. You know, RFK, he's polling in the mid-teens, right? You have Trump with these extremely high negatives who's starting to lose to Biden in the polls. DeSantis is a whole other thing. I mean, that guy is a fascist of his own sort. I don't really trust him to uphold these principles. I'd have to hear a lot more from him, and he'd have to do a lot of convincing very, very quickly. So who is
wind up
leading the
doing it in the other
counteroffensive to this?
direction?
Right, in the other direction. Exactly. Who is leading the counteroffensive?
Which at least would
to
bring
this?
us back to a world I understand, because the censors were the fucking right wing for my entire life.
Right, the theocratic Christian right were always the
That was
censorious
it.
ones. Yeah.
That was it. At least I would know how to handle that. I just don't, so many, classical liberals like myself, like we just don't, it's just mind blowing to see people who are theoretically within the left spectrum making these McCarthy era kinds of arguments. And I will say, and I mentioned this on the patron stream last night, we have some people in the space, and there's kind of a low grade. It hasn't really come much to the surface. It's kind of under the surface, but there's a little bit of a debate about whether we should give oxygen to the culture wars, that it's a distraction from class and economics. And I don't think you can separate those things, because it's the language is violence people had a lot to do with opening this fucking door. Once they started winning that cultural argument among elites, it opened the door to censorship, because now it's not speech, it's violence, right? Once you start equating it with violence, it changes the equation.
Right, exactly. And so here is RFK making a statement, because obviously the Republicans control the committee. So the Democrats, fortunately, were not successful in trying to get this censorship hearing censored. And so RFK did get a chance to speak in front of the cameras. And here he is making his initial argument.
Letter, and many of you signed. This is a letter, and many of you signed. Many of my fellow Democrats. I've spent my life in this party. I've devoted my life to the values of this party. This 102 people signed this. This itself is evidence of the problem that this hearing was convened to address. This is an attempt to censor a censorship hearing. The charges in this, and by the way, censorship is antithetical to our party.
No, it's not. No, it is not. It's antithetical to the vision of the party that you have in your head because of who you are and who your family was. It is not antithetical to this incarnation of the Democratic Party. In fact, it is part and parcel of today's Democratic Party. This is what's so incredibly frustrating about this. He did this. Marianne did this too. Everybody who gets asked, why are you running as a Democrat? Why aren't you running third party? They say, well, I'm trying to take the party back. Why? And it's such a selfish position to take, with Marianne talking about her nostalgia for the old Democratic Party of LBJ and FDR. Like, your nostalgia is your problem. That's your issue. Work that out with a therapist. These are very high stakes times here, okay? We don't have time to accommodate your feelings of nostalgia for the Democratic Party of old. Like, it's such a selfish thing to say at such a dire time when we desperately need to break the two-party system, to have these fucking people come up and say, well, I'm the real Democrat. Why? Why? Because you want to bring the party back to what it was 50 fucking years ago? It's not that anymore. I said this months ago. I'll say it again. McDonald's used to make real hamburgers. Then they started making pink slime and got fucking rich. So this is like going to the McDonald's board and say, hey, let's use real meat again. What are they going to do? They're going to laugh you out of the room. Why would we do that? We got rich doing it this way. That's what you sound like here, making these appeals to the Democratic Party of old. It's nonsense, and it is extremely selfish and shallow to be making these kinds of arguments in this moment where the Democratic Party is light years away from this ideal that you are so nostalgic for.
Well, and also, when you consider that his father was lead counsel for McCarthy, it is kind of like the Democratic Party of old. What's he complaining about? Well, it's like the 1950s era Democratic Party.
Well, there's that too. I mean, that's
running scared from McCarthy.
Right.
And it was appalling to my father, to my uncle, to FDR, to Harry Truman, to Thomas Jefferson, as the chairman referred to.
It was appalling to Thomas Jefferson, Harry Truman, FDR, your father. They're not here to do anything about it. Times have changed. At what point do you say, this party has jumped the shark, I'm out? Right. What are you doing here? They just voted, the Democrats voted unanimously to turn the cameras off on you. What do you think you can accomplish in this space? And the
Republicans voted unanimously to let you speak.
Right, to let you speak.
As many have pointed out, yes, you'd probably have more of a chance to win the Republican nomination. Like, I honestly think that would really shake up that race.
Yeah,
if he had
could.
decided to run
It's
as
possible.
a Republican. Like, if anyone, I could definitely see him peeling away some of Trump's support.
I could too. Anywhere. Running as a Republican would make more sense than running as a Democrat. Running as an independent probably makes the most sense. This is just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And it is selfish because this is all based on some emotional attachment to what he grew up into, right? Marianne, same thing. Like, at a certain point, it becomes irresponsible to, forfeit any objective judgment of the reality we're living in now in favor of some emotional attachment you have to the Democratic Party of old.
And also, I just got to say at this point, man, it's very powerful if once in a while you're from this, American aristocratic family that a lot of people are nostalgic for politically, this political dynasty. If every now and then you evoke your family, it's very powerful. When every other sentence is my father and my uncle and my other uncle.
Yeah, we were having dinner with Bob McNamara. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What point? Come on.
Teddy came home, and on this occasion, he was wearing pants. I will point out, and he had Orrin Hatch at the house. Strangely, Orrin Hatch was not wearing pants, and there was a donkey and a pound of animal stimulant on the table. I never asked what they were up to, but afterwards, they were able to come to an agreement.
Right, exactly.
It's enough already. It's enough. Shut up about your fucking family.
Yeah. All right, let's let him finish.
It is the basis for democracy. It sets us apart from all of the previous forms of government. We need to be able to talk, and the First Amendment was not written for easy speech. It was written for the speech that nobody likes you for.
Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations on explaining that to a party that has no interest in hearing it. All right. So he gets his microphone moment here. Now let's take a look. Debbie Wasserman Schultz comes at him again. She kind of explains what she originally laid out as reason to try and censor him. Here's this exchange.
Mr. Chairman, we respectfully requested that you rescind Mr. Kennedy's invitation to appear here due to his repeated and very recent statements that spread dangerous anti-Semitic and anti-Asian conspiracy theories and attempted to move into executive session because House rules prohibit public testimony that degrades or defames people. His reckless rhetoric helped fuel anti-Semitic incidents, which for the record are at the highest level in the United States since 1970. They have nearly tripled in the last 6 years. Since you gave Mr. Kennedy a megaphone today, I want to give him a chance to correct his statements and prepare some of the harm that he's helped cause. Mr. Kennedy, you're well educated, so yes or no, please. Are you aware that for centuries Jews have been scapegoated and blamed for causing illnesses like Black Plague and more recently COVID?
I am. Those are known as blood libel, and they are one of the worst and most disturbing parts of human history.
Good. I'm glad to know that. Of course, that you acknowledge that. Of course, it's true.
Occasionally,
And
I committed to educate people about it.
This pernicious form of anti-Semitism led to centuries of discrimination, even horrific pogroms and massacres, and it still fuels deadly violence today. Yet last week, you floated a baseless conspiracy theory that the coronavirus was bioengineered to target Caucasians and Black people, but to spare...
All right, now this gets a little confusing because we're broadcasting this. I know we're not supposed to spread anything that the CDC doesn't want us to spread, just for YouTube's sake. I mean, we have to cover this. It's news. We personally think about this whatever we're supposed to think. Whatever you say, whatever the CDC says, that's what we think, okay? So, because it gets complicated. Just everybody obey. Obey. That's it. That's all we can say.
The big Andre the Giant face.
Yeah, we'll change the name of the show for this segment to Do Obedience. That'll be our name of the show. Necessary Obedience that's the name of the show for the next 20 minutes.
Forced obedience.
Okay, forced compliance. We should do a show called Forced Compliance.
That'll be
that
our
would actually be
channel.
big. We could give Pod Save America a run for their money with a show called Forced Compliance.
We should. That would be funny if we had a satiric channel.
A satire channel.
Forced Compliance.
Forced Compliance. I like that.
Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people. Mr. Kennedy, your bizarre, unproven claim echoes that same historic slander of labeling Jews and Chinese people as a race, and that Jews, and in this case Chinese people, somehow manage to avoid a deadly illness that targets other groups for death. You do
Again,
see
not
that.
us saying that. That's her.
Yes
we think whatever
or no?
whatever you tell us to think. That's what we think.
No. I quoted what you said earlier, and it is directly what you said. So just ask me yes or no.
I was describing an NIH-funded study.
No, you didn't cite any.
I was describing an NIH-funded study by Cleveland Clinic scientists.
Reclaiming my time. You did not reference reclaiming my
published
time.
in USC
Mr.
Medical,
Chairman,
which is one.
The time is mine. I'm reclaiming it. Please ask the witness to stop talking.
You asked me a question.
Reclaiming.
Allow me to answer my question.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like about 10 seconds back.
The time belongs. You are slandering me incorrectly. You're saying it's dishonest.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from
Florida.
Florida.
Defend myself.
Mr.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Florida.
I'd like.
Okay, that's all we need from that. Okay, so this is what I mean by saying that there are really no good people in this hearing here. He did say what she said he said. He was describing a study that he had read. And so her insinuation that he said that in order to spread anti-Semitism is nonsense. Like I said, I mean, RFK is the first politician I've ever heard who is both an avowed rabid, if not bigoted Zionist, as well as someone who they're incredibly, in their mind, accusing of anti-Semitism. So he was describing something he read. That's not on the recording that went public, but he was describing that. So yeah, they are trying to smear him as an anti-Semite. They are taking that approach because they think that that's useful. On the other hand, he did say what she said, he said, and the fact that he, couches everything he says as, well, I'm describing something else. I'm describing a study that I read. Again, that gives him the sort of lawyerly protection against these charges. So you just have two very slippery people going head to head. In this case, she's definitely it's definitely ridiculous to try and smear him as being motivated by some sort of anti-Semitism. That's clearly not true. But on the other hand, this is what complicates it. This is why I say this guy is just not worth it. Because first of all, on balance, on policy, he's running as a Democrat. He's bad on a lot of issues. And when he steps in it like this, why? What is in it for any sort of movement? I won't even call it a left movement. What is in it for any genuine populist movement to go to bat for this guy when you see this muddy exchange between these two very untrustworthy Democrats? Untrustworthy. This is Democrat on Democrat violence that we are witnessing here. And I say, let them fight.
All right. First of all, Debbie Wasserman Schultz does more to spread anti-Semitism every time she gets in front of a camera than 1,000 RFKs ever could.
Yeah.
But RFK, I mean, I don't think he's anti-Semitic. I think he's a fucking kook. This is my take. He has said all this crazy shit. You know what? When the little voice in your head says, let's make an Anne Frank parallel, don't listen to it.
Well, we're going to get to that in a second.
How about that? So he does have a pattern of saying just batshit crazy stuff about Jews and the Holocaust and making these really inappropriate comparisons, which, look, he's clearly a smart guy. He's a lawyer. He's well educated. There are certain things you just don't get into. There are certain parallels you just don't draw, certain comparisons you just don't make. The fact that he almost seems to have a tick because this didn't happen once, this keeps happening. Okay, so I don't really think clearly with his rabid Zionism, I don't really think it's motivated by anti-Semitism. I think he's a little fucking touched. He could make all of the points that he makes about regulatory capture, about the virus of unknown origin. He can make all of those points without going to the crazy place because a lot of it is valid, but he does. So why? Why does he go there? There's no real political advantage to taking your book, which makes very valid points about certain things that we can't talk about here in East Berlin, to then go on and argue that HIV doesn't cause AIDS. What's the upside? Let's even say that you believe that personally. Why would you put it in the book? Is that really the important part of the book? Is that really the thrust of the book? Why the fuck's that even in there?
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like he's a little fucking tapped.
Well, yeah, I mean, in that way, I think he's an overzealous, egomaniacal celebrity lawyer who doesn't know when to shut his mouth. Part of being a good lawyer is knowing when to rest your case, right? Rest your case. I thought the first, I'll be very, very specific without getting into anything that's going to get us thrown off. The first 4 sections of the first chapter of his book, which were very long. I mean, the first chapter of his book is basically its own book. It's got to be almost 100 pages. I read it on a Kindle, so I don't know exactly what the page count is. 100 pages worth of stuff. The first 4 chapters I thought was very, very compelling. What he said seemed to check out. After that, he goes on and on and on and makes the kind of points that Russell has been talking about a little bit here on this show, more in some previous episodes that we've done. Yeah, just you have to know when you've made your point, when to rest your case. He clearly doesn't know that. He's a Kennedy, man. He's surrounded by people who hang on his every word, right? He's got a massive ego. And I think search anything, just assume. I take your point, Gene. What I'm saying is you have 2 untrustworthy people who are not worth the investment. If I saw RFK as worth the investment, I would put the work in to vet these claims. I don't see him as worth the investment for reasons I think I've articulated very loudly and very often. A little bit on this show, a lot in previous shows. If I saw a real forward momentum here, then that'd be one thing. I don't. I see this ending up just like the Bernie campaign, worse, because he's not going to get close. He's down by over 50 points in the polls. His polling has flatlined. He got a balance because he's a Kennedy and he's a very powerful advocate on certain issues. But he hasn't grown since then, and he's not going to, because the Democrats own their primary process. And so there's only a certain amount of growth you can expect within the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders, who's much more friendly to the average Democrat than RFK did, he peaked at 30 to 35. He couldn't break through against Joe Biden. There's no reason to think RFK will. And to the point that a lot of people have made, which is that, I mean, and I think this is a crazy idea, that there's going to be this wave of independents and Republicans registering as Democrats to vote for RFK in the primary. First of all, no, there's not. They have their own primary to vote in. They're Republicans first. They're not going to switch parties to vote for a guy who said he would sign an assault weapons ban if it got to his desk. They're not going to do that.
It's not popular with those guys.
Secondly,
they want assault weapons in their Happy Meals.
Exactly. Yeah. Even if that did happen, and I am granting you something I should never, ever grant you in a million years. But let's say I grant it to you. And there is this surge of Republican and independent participation in the Democratic primary that puts RFK over the top. What the DNC argued in court after 2016 was not simply that they have the right to put their thumb on the scales of their primary process by smearing Bernie Sanders as an atheist because he's Jewish. No, they argued that they are a private organization with no obligation to honor the results of the primary elections at all. In other words, they have the right to say at the end of a primary, well, thanks for your advice, voters, but we're going to do it this way. If RFK rides a wave of Republican support to win the Democratic nomination, they will simply say his victory, quote unquote, was a result of right-wing infiltration. Therefore, it does not represent the will of the Democratic Party. Therefore, the Democratic Party is ignoring and invalidating these primaries. Joe Biden is our nominee. That is what they will do. Even if you win, that is what they will do. And so, and what is his plan to fight back against that? I don't hear anything. He said on multiple occasions, I have no plan B after the primary. So what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Like why is it worth refereeing this to this degree? Like I said, I'm happy to make the broad statement that censorship is bad and RFK should not be censored. Not in Congress, not on social media, not anywhere.
I mean,
right? But beyond that, like how into the weeds am I supposed to get on this?
Right. Yeah, some people in the chat are like, well, then why are you covering it? We're covering it because of the censorship angle.
Yeah, because we can't not cover it. I mean, we
can't not cover it. It's a big story right now.
It's a big story that everybody's going to be talking about, right?
But, I mean, we've made our opinions about RFK pretty clear. And frankly, the fact that his poll numbers are pulling back now demonstrates what I've said about this tendency of people to say shit over the summer that they don't say.
once it actually starts to get real. All right? They love to make these empty, rebellious gestures by saying they're going to vote for somebody that they're never actually going to vote for when they're first asked by the pollsters in a presidential cycle. So that's why he was at 20 and now he's at what, 12 or something?
12, 14,
That's what,
16,
because now they're answering honestly. Now they're not just answering as like to provoke the pollsters and make a media story. They're actually answering what they're going to do. And frankly, once you actually get to the vote, it's not even going to be, assuming he's on the ballot, which I don't think he will be. But assuming he's on the ballot, by then it'll be 11, 12%.
Well, he's also gotten some bad press recently. Don't forget, the media loves a story. So the media is inclined to, when a candidate announces, like when Marianne announced, the media made a little fanfare and she shot up to 10% in one of the polls, right? Because a story is a story 2 years before the election, right? It's kind of interesting. Ooh, this is kind of interesting. She's challenging him. The same thing with RFK. Now that they're pushing back on him, his numbers are going down a little bit. They're going down a little bit because Democrats overwhelmingly trust the media. Once the media turns on him, his numbers are going to go down, even from where they are. So, like I said, I just don't see it as an investment worth making.
Like
at
if
all.
you're talking, actually, I forgot. New Hampshire isn't first anymore. It's South Carolina. Yeah. If he were actually on that ballot, he'll be lucky to crack 5% in South Carolina.
South Carolina, yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult.
New Hampshire, they like to be ornery. That's why I would say in New Hampshire he could crack 10%, not in South Carolina.
Yeah, exactly. Danny RG, you're a new patron and you're in the studio here. So you're new, so you probably don't know what the protocol is for call-in. But if you would like to talk, just unmute your microphone and we'll admit you and you can say, hi, we have not seen you before. But that's how it works. So if we got a bunch of new patrons over the past few days. So if you want to call in as a patron and you want to say hello, just unmute the mic and that's our signal to admit you. So, but if you don't want to talk, then you're fine to just hang out backstage and keep yourself muted, and you can watch from there. That's cool too. Sean McWilliams, thank you for the $4.99. Thank you for the $4.99. Billy D, return to sender grocery bags won't save us. No, that's true. But look, this is part of the reason why people get frustrated with a lot of the climate stuff, because they do see it as a mechanism for control, and they just don't buy that on the one hand, these elites who tell us this is life and death can act so irresponsibly in their personal lives. Like, if you really thought this was that important, you would have a virtual Davos conference, right? Or have Davos meetings in like the major, New York, London, Paris, Tokyo, or whatever, and then have everybody Zoom in, and we'll have a big, virtual conference. Like, there are ways to do it in ways that don't offset that don't put all.
Yeah, you want to show you actually mean it. Do that.
Right? Make a symbolic gesture that you're actually doing your part to do as you say. Philosophical Thirstworms, thanks for the $5. These would be his underlings if he wins. I don't know how he expects to buck break them. Well, that's the other thing. And that was the design flaw of the Bernie campaign as well, right? Is that you're running inside a Democratic Party that is not going to take your side once you win. Like, are you going to bend them to your will in the way that Trump bent the Republicans to their will? Probably not. Because Trump represented capital just as much, more or less, as the Republican Party.
He never really did either. He just gave them everything they wanted on taxes. He didn't do anything about hedge funds. He didn't rock the boat fundamentally. On the war side, he did. But that's where the president doesn't really need their approval.
Right, exactly. You don't
on the
need
things where he had to go through there, he didn't do anything that would be antithetical to what they want.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Tusker, thanks for the $5. Amen, Keaton. I guess that was on my RFK little rant that I went on. I saw you post that there. Thank you. Cool Blue, thanks for the $4.99. RERFK, the old Democratic Party used to routinely carry Alabama and Mississippi. The old Republican Party used to routinely carry Vermont. Things change and have. Yeah, that's a great point too. Right. Like, what are you even talking about? Like, what are you even talking about? Who cares?
Right.
Who cares?
Right.
Thank you for that point, Cool Blue. Cool Blue knows his electoral politics history. Maybe you can, we'll have to message you, Cool Blue, because you would be good on an election night broadcast, I think. Because Cool Blue really knows his stuff when it comes to electoral maps and polling.
We're looking for a Steve Kornacki.
Yeah, we're looking for a Kornacki, Cool Blue. So maybe we'll get in touch with you or send us an email. Tusker, Thanks for the $2. Forced compliance can be my show name. So we talked a little bit with Tusker after the patron show last night. And Tusker, I guess we can announce this now that you super chatted here. But Tusker is going to start contributing some essays and monologues for the show. So she will have a sort of recurring role as a contributor with, sort of extended takes on things. And so we're looking forward to that, Tusker.
She's reviewing the new Barbie movie this week.
Yeah, right, exactly. First assignment. Yeah. We need a review of Barbie. No, I love Israel more.
From a Marxist perspective.
Yeah, right, exactly. No, I love Israel more. Wrong, I love Israel more is the absolute state of U.S. politics. Yeah.
Seriously.
Exactly.
I said
well, that's the thing.
I said to Kerry, there's like when Geraldo interviewed Charles Manson. Like they just found two repulsive people to go up against each other. Who do you side with?
Right. Well, and that is the other thing. When it comes to what was that super chat about? Sorry, I lost it. I forgot. I was going to respond to it, but I lost where it was. Yeah, sorry. I took it off the screen. I had a more thorough answer to that here. To that. Where the hell is it? Oh, I apologize. Russell, do you remember the text of it?
I do not. People in the chat, well.
Yeah, people in the chat. What was that? Go back and read it. If you go back and read it, I will answer that one more time. I just lost it. I took it off the screen. I was about to read it again. But anyway, sorry about that. Pete Sweet, thanks for the $5. We appreciate that. Long story short, Russ, you are looking for the word meshuggah.
Meshuggah.
Is that? Oh yeah, when you talk about him being a nut there, yeah.
Meshuggah.
Yeah.
He's meshuggah.
He's a little meshuggah, that guy.
He's a little meshuggah.
Little meshuggah, that guy over there. Oh yeah, that's what it is. Okay, I see it on the Rumble thing now. No, I love Israel more. I love Israel more. The absolute state of U.S. politics. That's what it was about.
Yes.
What I was going to say is the reason they are able to smear him as an anti-Semite inside the Democratic Party is because inside the Democratic Party, and this is true for the GOP as well, inside the two major parties, like kissing Israel's ass at every opportunity is just a given. That's just a prerequisite for the job. So like they don't consider that to be any sort of purchase of goodwill with the Jewish community because they're like, well, you just have to unconditionally support Israel before you even get a seat at the table. Whereas in our eyes, we look at like, how can you call him an anti-Semite when he's a Zionist? Well, in an atmosphere where it's given that everybody has to be a Zionist in order to be there in the first place, that doesn't even count for you. That's why they're able to very casually make that smear. Anyway, I'm glad I found that because I did want to make that point. Nicole Vance, thanks for the $10. Meeting since 2 a.m. Have a great day, gentlemen. Meeting since 2 a.m. So you've been up all night. Wow. Crazy. Thank you, Nicole, for the donation. Black Freud, thanks for the $5. RFK is a niche guy who has become a psyop. I ain't voting for a fourth-string Kennedy who's embracing his abusers. It's interesting. You know, the psyop thing, I mean, I know, I understand how you could say people might function as certain, you know, I think that the psyop thing can be descriptive of how people, you know, function at the end of the day versus, you know, what if there's any intention behind the scenes to pitch somebody as a psyop. I don't think RFK is being controlled by anybody. I think RFK has a giant ego and he's overzealous in a lot of what he says. And I think that he gets himself into a lot of trouble there. In terms of a psyop, no, because I don't think I don't think, like, what I would say is, I think there's a possibility that he would function as a sheepdog in bringing a lot of people into the party who hate the party. I do buy the argument, though, that a lot of people who vote for RFK in the primary, to the extent that they are, you know, independents who switch over, they will go right back to either not voting third party, or voting for the GOP. Like, I don't think he's creating new Democrats in that way.
No.
But he is definitely embracing his abusers, as you said. Absolutely. This plea. Please, 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 can we go back to the way the Democrats used to be? I mean, no, that's their answer. No, we're not. We're making a lot more money now. Philosophical Thirst Worms, thanks for the $5. I just can't get behind CornOS anemic COVID Biden criticism and Trump country comments. RFK is the right kind of kook to speak to America's heart. I mean, I don't think either of them are going to make the kind of impact that could come close to winning the presidency. I think it's more a question of how do you use each candidacy. And I think a candidacy inside the Democratic Party is a doomed candidacy that at the end of the day is not going to pose a real threat, because by election day, meaning actual election day, not Super Tuesday, not the scrimmage, right, but the actual day of the vote, the Green Party candidate's going to be on the ballot siphoning votes from the Democratic ticket, right? Whereas RFK will not be a factor on that day.
RFK, you will be lucky to get the opportunity. Even if he is on the ballot in the first couple states, I promise you, 90% of this country, he will not be on the ballot. Probably, I don't even think he'll be on the ballot in South Carolina. But even if he were, it's not going to go past the first 2 or 3 states.
Right. Rando, Calrissian, you skipped the Tuskegee stuff, he said. Well, yeah, did he mention the Tuskegee experiment in his response? Well, yeah, I mean, look, obviously that's a valid thing to bring up, but that's what Stacey Plaskett would also build her argument on, which is that you're spreading this paranoia, this fear of the medical establishment by invoking the Tuskegee experiment, right? I'm not saying that there's no truth to any of that. I was just trying to zero in on his response to her. And honestly, it was hard to find that clip because Thomas Massey was the one who asked that question, and then he went back and responded to something that she said. But his invocation of Tuskegee is something that the Democrats would use against him. They would use that against him by saying you're making a false equivalence in their mind between the idea that black people shouldn't take the shot because of some valid fear that's sort of left over from the Tuskegee. So, that's something they would use to further their case. Am I missing something there? I mean, that's how I see that.
Right.
Nicole, I also want to apologize for my anger about Bodine. Bodine? I don't apologize for speaking the truth. Who's Bodine? That name sounds familiar.
Is she talking about the
I thought she was talking about Aldine. That's Aldine.
Yeah, I think she means Aldine.
Aldine. Okay, maybe.
I don't remember any anger.
I don't remember any anger. I think you put an angry face on the chat about Aldine, but that's okay. No apology necessary.
Oh, okay.
And thank you for the donation. Yeah, between RFK and Dr. West, I'm sitting this one out. Dr. West calling the media his brother, SMH. Well, he calls everybody his brother. I mean, that's his that's his
shtick.
That's his shtick. That's his thing. If the Vanguard has dumped Marianne, and I will say, with regard to the brother this and the brother that, I think that's part of why he has established a lot of goodwill, right? Because people recognize it. Like he called Sean Hannity his brother when he interviewed Sean Hannity. I think a lot of people, especially now in such polarized times, I think a lot of people like that. I think people respond to that.
Let me say something about that. So he, he says
recognizing the humanity in your opponents. I think people generally like that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
He says openly that he's coming out of this kind of I forget what he calls it, but it's a specific term for kind of church revival way of doing things. That's not the term he uses. He uses a specific term for it. I'm right now, I'm going through the coddling of the American mind, and he spends a lot of time talking about there's a chapter about Evergreen, which, famously drove out Weinstein in this just absolutely crazy, witch hunt kind of a fervor where the students were just kind of allowed to take over the campus. And you look at a lot of that, and, part of what strikes me is these previous leaders of the civil rights movement, they were religious. They were based in religion. So, I mean, even Malcolm X it wasn't Christianity, but they were based in the moral perspective of theology. And I think part of why that movement is so badly led and so repugnant to so many people is that they've moved away from the field of public life that really delves into grand philosophical unifying moral messages and ideas and moved into the navel gazing granular logic of academia at its worst. And Cornel West is kind of hearkening back to that more universal, more theological vision of moral questions. And I think that's a lot more appealing than other people who have moved into that space as a hustle, in my opinion, like Ibram X. Kendi or Robin DiAngelo. I think he's offering an antidote to that, what I would consider a terrible wrong turn that movement has taken.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. This is from Bonzo Beans over on Rumble. These are a few Rumble rants that I took the liberty of combining here, but thank you for those donations. If I were Catholic, I'd be in confession every time I hear DWS speak. Money is speech, speech is violence, money is violence. Interesting. I like that. Fair take on JFK, egocentric. Correction, you meant RFK, of course. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for those donations, my friend. We appreciate that very much. We'll keep on reading some super chats here. Thank you guys very much for being here. Please hit that like button. If you have not subscribed to either the YouTube or the Rumble channel, please do so. That's very important. Between RFK and Dr. West, I'm sitting this one out. Oh, sorry, that's we already got that one. But thank you. Tom S., thanks for the $5. If the Vanguard has dumped Marianne, will Crystal and Kyle follow suit? I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know. I'm uninformed.
I don't think they take their cues from the Vanguard.
Yeah, no. If anything, it's the other way around.
Yes, I think, we did a segment recently where we showed Crystal did this really cringy eye roll talking about, how they won't line up behind Marianne. I think it's getting increasingly untenable for them to maintain what's left of their dignity and support Marianne. So that's an interesting question, at what point they jettison her, give up, throw in the towel. It's a big ego blow for them as well, I think, to admit that they backed this absolutely ridiculous campaign. I don't know what they thought was going to happen here, but I think it's probably started to become a millstone around their necks.
I would think so, but I will take a look. I have not heard anything about any real transition in that way thus far, but I will look into it. Thank you. Kuznetsky was saying, thanks for the $4.99. RFK Jr.'s Dem party is not the party of his father and uncle. Mystifies me that his loyalties are so misplaced. Exactly. It's a version of what we said, but thank you. McDougal, thanks for the $4.99. I don't think I've seen you here before, but welcome. Do you guys ever respect the fact that Trump and MAGA were actually able to force a true takeover of the GOP, unlike the feckless progressives? Yes.
Have you ever watched our show?
Well, that's what I mean.
He might be new.
I don't think he has. That's
I've never. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I've never seen
quite a lot.
But yeah, quite a bit. Absolutely.
I've written, I think, more than one article that talked about that.
Yeah, not only have they forced the takeover of the GOP, but the GOP in 2016 really acted in defiance of their media. Because Fox News was not on board with Trump during the 2015 into early 2016, and they took a big chance. They took a big chance. Not only did they defy the media, they defied a lot of the polling, and this is one of the reasons why they may defy the polling again. It's interesting because in 2016, all the polls actually said, believe it or not, John Kasich was blowing Hillary out of the water in the general election matchups.
Right. And they didn't even listen to that.
They didn't listen to that. They just threw caution to the wind. Yep. Kasich was beating Hillary in Connecticut. Kasich was down by 5 against Hillary in New York. Right. And they still said, no, we don't want that. We don't want that.
I often make the comparison to Colonel Kurtz's line in Apocalypse Now about the Republican voters in regards to the Viet Cong. Give us 2 divisions of such men and our troubles in this country would be over very quickly.
Exactly. Read a few more here before we head out. Thank you guys for being here. 527 strong in the YouTube chat. 141 over on Rumble. Congratulations to Rumble for making it through a stream without conking out on us. Nice work, Rumble. We appreciate it. Good to have you back. Rumble. Not the audience. The audience is great, but the tech over there really hit us hard last night. Really fucked up our shit last night. Don't appreciate that. It created a lot more work for me Not edit it, but I have to combine the old clips with the new clips and compress them and format them and upload them. So, thank you, Rumble, for cooperating with us. Congratulations to the tech team over
some
there.
of those teal bucks into your own platform.
For making it through a stream.
Yes.
Congratulations. I want to be Jackie Onassis, says Mr. Fancy Pants. I want a pair of dark sunglasses. Thank you very much.
Cornell West has always been one of my
It's always a hero of
heroes.
mine. Exactly. Delthea Simmons, watching the Dem party make RFK look sympathetic, typical Dem snafu. Yeah, they came off much worse than him in that hearing, I will say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
They just come off as just...
That we can all agree on.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they're just out of control. Absolutely out of control. Spade, thanks for the $4.99. No, I understand he calls people brother and sister, but he has got to get tougher. We're on the brink of nuclear war. Stop being nice. No, I think that's a fair criticism, but I think you can be tough and not drop the brother thing. Like the brother thing doesn't bother me because the brother thing I think is why a lot of people like him. I think it's why a lot of ordinary people like him, because that alone invokes a spirit of like good faith debate, right? That you can call Sean Hannity your brother, right?
Right.
It's just a base recognition of like, yeah, we don't agree with each other on anything, but we're all people, right? And we all have a certain respect for each other as people. Like I think that works. When it comes to the tactics, I think you're right. I thought he let Anderson Cooper dominate that interview. He sends Jordan Chariton an email saying James Carville should be ashamed of himself. He should tweet that out in public. Like he's going to have to get tougher as the campaign goes on. But don't forget, I made this point on the last show, and I'll make this point one more time. The media, because they have this rapport with Cornel West, because they brought him on during the George Floyd protests, and Cornel West brought Anderson Cooper to tears. Like they have this reverence for him to the point where I think right now they're trying to charm him out of the race. They're coming on and saying, "Hey, come on, like we love you, man, but why are you risking the democracy, right? Why can't you just, sit down and, know your role and, let Joe Biden win? Like, why do you have to do this?" I think they're trying to charm him into standing down. And so I think that's why they're taking that approach. By this time next year, if he's still in the race, they're going to go brass knuckled. And he's going to have to counter with brass knuckles of his own. Like this whole little back and forth of, well, I appreciate you having me, my brother, and I love you, Cornell. Oh, I know I love you too. Like that's all going to be. They are not going to sound at all like that by this time next year if he sticks to it and he's polling decent numbers.
Oh my God! Did we freeze? Are we freezing? We're freezing a little bit, ironically. I thought it was just me, but I saw somebody mention it in the comments because it happened a couple of minutes ago. Yeah, this is part of why I'm not terribly critical of any of that. There's plenty of time left for battle to be joined. If he sounds like that in 3 months, come back and fair enough. He just entered the race. Give the guy he's just introducing himself as a candidate. And also, just building on what I was saying, hey, in a time when the most visible parts of the left, the parts of the left that most people see on these outlets, is characterized by extremely divisive and absolutely batshit crazy identitarian politics, I think it's a good thing to have somebody appealing to a more unifying vision of our common humanity to kind of redirect people away from that understanding of what the left is and what it represents.
Yeah. People are saying as soon as Keaton cursed Rumble, you froze. Interesting.
No, yeah, I saw it too. I thought it was my internet, but then I saw somebody in the chat mention it.
Yeah, no, I see a couple people. How am I doing now? Am I coming through okay now? I have my Ethernet plugged in, so the Wi-Fi should be perfect because I'm not on Wi-Fi. I'm on an Ethernet cable. Yeah, okay, I'm moving all right. See, I'm watching myself now just to make sure. I think I'm okay. But anyway, we are almost out of here. But yeah, look, I agree. The other thing about the Cornell thing is that you're running on an extended timeline when you run in the general election. Like, there's not the urgency to get this done by Super Tuesday. He has till November of next year, right? So he can massage it a little bit. But what I'm saying is he needs to, at some point, be willing to get tough when they get tough on him, because they are going to come at him with such tenacity. You thought they thought they were hard on Bernie. You hadn't seen nothing yet, because Bernie was ultimately a guy they knew was going to play ball when it mattered. By this time next year, man, if he is still in this race, they're going to come for him and anybody who supports him, including any of us.
They're coming for us. Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. You think the Bernie Bros thing was rough?
Oh, yeah.
You wait until they start talking about the mysterious world of people supporting West. Oh my God, they're gonna make us out to be a bunch of fucking serial killers.
And also,
they're gonna make us out to be like the biggest incels in the country. Everybody.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this, because, Jimmy said in his take about Cornell and Anderson Cooper that he's reached out to them and offered advice. They need to be getting back to people who are offering to get involved. Okay, because listen, the path to relevance does not run strictly through disaffected progressives, right? If you're going to actually build a meaningful coalition, you're going to have to go into some less comfortable spaces, into the Door universe, into our universe. And if Jimmy's out there willing to help, you got to return his goddamn emails, and return our emails too. By the way, I thought you wanted to come on our show. I heard they wanted to hear from us, and then I haven't heard anything. What we be too many jokes?
We would?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that stuff is upsetting. It's upsetting because there need to be all hands on deck here. There need to be all hands on deck here. None of this bullshit where you're afraid of associating with quote unquote toxic people. Anybody who supports you by this time next year is going to be smeared as the worst human beings in the history of the world. They're going to smear
people who are going to stick with you through that.
Right.
You need to come to people like us.
Right. You need to come to people like us and like Jimmy, because don't think that you're going to duck criticism by playing nice and by only associating with nice, non-toxic people. We are all, anybody who says to a pollster that they support Cornell West by this time next year will be branded toxic, no matter who you are, no matter who the fuck you are.
And you're a religious man, they're all going to go Peter and deny you. All these fucking PMCs you think are your friends now, they're not going to stick around through that.
Yeah.
When the whole establishment comes down like a ton of bricks, where it's going to have serious social and personal and possibly economic consequences for some of these commentators, they're not going to want to be anywhere near you.
Don says email Chris Hedges. He can make it happen. I don't know how to email Chris Hedges either. I would love to interview. I mean, I've been wanting to interview Hedges for a long time. I don't know how to get in touch with him. He's hard to get in touch with. If anybody knows how to get in touch with any of these guys, we have an email out to the Cornell team. They said to some people we know they were expecting an email from us. So I don't know if they vetted us and didn't like what they saw, but whatever. But anyway, Hedges, same thing. If anybody knows how to get in touch with him, I'd love to. Anyway, thank you guys very much for being here. We appreciate you all. Black Freud, thanks for the super chat. Cornell is bringing a Bible to a gunfight, calling our adversaries brother. Knock it off. Be cordial. Voice our rage. Black Freud, send me a list of questions to ask Cornell if we ever do get to interview him, and I will absolutely take much of that advice. Thank you guys very much for being here. We appreciate you all. Courtney says, I do. Do you know? I do. Does that mean you know how to get in touch with any of those guys I just mentioned? If you do, hit us up for sure. But thank you guys very much for being here. You're a great crowd, 511 strong at YouTube, 139 on Rumble. Great audience for a Friday morning. Great way to start the day, we hope. We thank you all very much. We will be back on Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, here on YouTube and Rumble and all of our various platforms. Russell, is that all we got for today?
That's all we got.
That's all we got for today. Folks, thank you very much. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you at the end of the weekend, Sunday night, 7 p.m. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Go to patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com to help support the show. Patrons and Substack subscribers, be on the lookout. You're going to get the replay of last night's show emailed to you this afternoon sometime, so keep an eye out for that. And we will see you all back here on Sunday. Thank you very much for this morning. Until we see you again, be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.